Erin just came home and brought me cookies and soda. So much for the diet. Hello guys and welcome back to my channel. So today we are venturing into a Wicked Wednesday. That is a creepy cryptid that has been requested by one of you and it's been long awaited. I'm sorry for the delay, but it is finally here. There's so much information about it as well. It's kind of weird. But before we get into that, if you guys like this kind of stuff, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I would love to have you here in the month of July. My giveaway will be coming out for our 300 subscriber giveaway, and then once we hit 1,000 subscribers, we will have another one. So subscribe so you can be part of that, and share this video if you feel ever so inclined. That's totally helpful. Comment down below. Throw me into the algorithm. I would be greatly appreciated. So too much babbling, we're gonna get into it. So today's creepy cryptid takes us into the rural state of West Virginia. West Virginia has a measly population of 1.8 million. Now, the ruralness of this does play an important role. Just like the Muggy and Monster, I did want to emphasize how rural the area was, because if there is a cryptid out there, it has more place to hide as opposed to somewhere like LA where there's more people. So the population with 1.8 million is actually 1.82 million. I'm sorry, I was wrong, 1.82 million. It makes it 77.1 people per square mile, which isn't much in comparison to the neighboring states, which are Ohio, that have 283.7, 202.6, Kentucky 110, so not that far off, and then Pennsylvania 283.9. So if this creature does thrive in that particular region of those states, then West Virginia is the best bet for it to hide. Thick forests, mountainous ranges. So there is a large mountain range there and dense forest and not a lot of people. So a lot of places to hide. So that does play an important role when we are looking at these creatures. Now, West Virginia is no stranger to the wild and weird. There are multiple cryptids out there, such as Bigfoot. There are also lots of UFO sightings. There are tons of people out there who claim that aliens do visit West Virginia frequently, and there are tons of spooky ghost sightings because there is so much history in West Virginia. So they are just crawling with the spooky out there. Now, the most popular story of the Mothman does center around the town of Point Pleasant, but before we get into that tragic story turned tourist trap, we are going to talk about a couple of other sightings and a lot of stuff actually surrounding the Mothman to get you guys the full story, at least that I can find. Now, the first widely accepted / recorded story of the Mothman was in 1966, but per usual, I want to be full disclosure with you guys about what I do find. So I did find a couple of sites that did try and state, and I say try because I didn't find very much evidence, take it for what you will, of backing these statements up, but some people said that there are recordings of a Mothman-like creature pre-white colonization of the area, but I did find that it sounded a lot more like the Thunderbird legend as opposed to the Mothman legend, which we will get into that a little bit later. Also, I have found that some people state they have seen the Mothman in Germany, Russia, as well as the UK. Again, I didn't find as many sighting stories as there were in West Virginia, but I always want to include that. Take it for what you will. We're not really going to be talking about that very much. Touch on it slightly later in the video. Now, as far as the Mothman goes, we don't know if the Mothman is a singular being or a species, such as Bigfoot, where Bigfoot is widely accepted to be in different ranges. It's not one particular being that just travels around. Whereas Mothman, it's kind of accepted that it's a singular being that just has lived for a very long time. We don't know how long it lives, what kills it, if it's coming from another dimension, something like that. So also, keep that in mind. But we're going to back to the sightings of North America. So in 1966, there were multiple reported sightings. One of the biggest ones was on November 15th when two couples were driving on back roads of their hometown in Point Pleasant doing what teens do. You remember when you first got your license and you packed everybody into the car and you just wanted to go for a ride and explore. That's basically what they were doing. So when they did go out, they pulled up to the statements, I believe it says an abandoned factory. Later, I'm trying to connect if whether or not this abandoned factory is the TNT plant that we will talk about later. But when they pulled up, they wanted to, you know, do what teens do, if you're catching my drift. And they noticed two glowing lights kind of standing off in the distance. Now, being curious teenagers, they got out of the car and they went to go examine to see what it was. And as they approached, they realized that this wasn't lights. These were eyeballs, glowing red eyeballs of a 7-foot tall human-like creature. Is bipedal, standing on 2 legs, but 7 feet tall, had arms, but it also had wings on its back with 2 large glowing red eyes. Now, they freaked out, rightfully so. They ran back to their car and they sped off. And while they sped off, the creature, the Mothman, continued to follow them. I just spit. I'm so sorry. The Mothman followed them. Now, one of my questions is, why didn't the Mothman catch them? Was he just trying to chase them off, or what was going on? So I want to know your guys' theories on that one down below, because even if it couldn't take all 4 of them, it could at least take on one of them. I'm sure it could fly or run faster than a couple teenagers could. Now, the next sighting was also in 1966, the next day on November 16th. Now, this is confirmed that this was at the old TNT factory. So this factory had a bunch of old World War II kind of bunkers there where they put gunpowder, TNT, and just a lot of bad stuff into the ground there. Now, another couple was traveling from a neighboring town back to Point Pleasant when they passed the factory. And when they saw the creature come out and peer into their vehicle, I guess it approached their vehicle and peered in. And they freaked out and flew back home. Not flew literally, but like drove as fast as they could back home. And again, like the first story, they filed a police report. Now, there were a variety of sightings that were claimed immediately after these 2, I guess, big sightings happened. But from what I could tell, the consistency between the aftermath stories versus the first 2 stories were not the same. So there are reports from the police officers, particularly in the first one, that they interviewed each of the teens separately and their stories all aligned with each other's, which is an interrogation tactic they do when a group is involved in something illegal. They try and get one of them to break in or see if their stories are different. The police officers made it very clear that the stories were all the same. They all recounted the same events. They all had the same fear in their eyes. So that one seems pretty legit in my opinion. But the ones after, I mean, we really can't tell. Are they just hyper aware? That is something that happens a lot after these kinds of sightings. Is a huge bird just scaring them? Is it a vulture that just flew by and it's big? Vultures are big. And they could have just thought it was the Mothman, or an owl out at night and they thought it was the Mothman. That kind of thing. There's a mass hysteria that happens after these kinds of events. And I'm not the kind of person who's going to downplay anybody's what they feel that they saw, but we do need to keep that in mind, that your brain will play tricks on you, especially if you are scared. Now, there are a couple of reports of another sighting that happened in January of 1967, where somebody had claimed that they saw what looked like the Mothman over by the Silver Bridge. I believe that's what it's called. Yeah, the Silver Bridge in Point Pleasant. This is, again, West Virginia. And then nothing happened after that. There weren't a spike of sightings like there were before. There's just that one reported sighting. And then on December 15th, 1967, the Mothman was reportedly seen perched on the Silver Bridge overlooking the Ohio River, and then tragedy struck. The Silver Bridge collapsed into the Ohio River during rush hour, killing 46 people, and a couple of those bodies have never been recovered. Now, this was absolutely devastating to this community. It was their point of transfer. It was right before Christmas. There are people who claimed also leading up to the days leading up to the disaster that they had dreams of people like floating in the river with Christmas gifts all around them. And some people believe that was kind of an omen, that these people kind of were given psychic abilities prior to that, and that is going to attach to a theory later on that I'm going to discuss. Now, you can't Google Point Pleasant, West Virginia without the collapse of the Silver Bridge popping up along with countless pages about Mothman. So immediately after the bridge collapsed, in the ensuing chaos, once everything kind of immediately after the chaos settled down, I guess would be the correct way to put it, people started reporting that they saw Mothman. They weren't talking about the disaster, well, they were, but they were talking about the disaster and Mothman. People truly believed that they saw him standing, or it, up on that bridge. So, I mean, this was just something that just became accepted in the community. And the community now, if you ever look it up, I will try and put some photos up here as well, has kind of capitalized on that Mothman legend. There's like a statue in town. You go into stores, you get cookies. If you ever watch the BuzzFeed video, there's cookies, there's pizza, there's statues, there's a museum. They have a whole thing about it. So, I mean, they turned this absolutely devastating travesty into a tourist trap. And I think that's, I mean, smart, but a little bit crazy. And also, I do also want to say that there are kind of word of mouth people who claim that they saw the Mothman to their family members or their kids who are now on the internet, on Reddit, reporting this stuff, but they never reported it to the police or the news because they didn't want to be labeled that crazy person who claims that they also saw Mothman. So now the kids are going online and reporting, yeah, my grandma says they saw it, oh, my dad said they saw it, but we aren't hearing it directly from their mouths, we're just hearing it from the kids who claim that their parents told them growing up that that's just the way it is, like how your parents tell you one thing that is fact, and it's the same thing with this. Their parents told them this is a fact, this is what I saw, and now they're sharing it. And I think that is really, really interesting, and it changes the way that the dynamic works. So now we as kids are able to put our parents' stories out there, or our elder stories out there on the internet to add to these stories. And I think that's really cool. And I'm not going to go too far into it, but I think it's interesting. So there are a few other, I don't want to call them minor reportings because these were huge tragic events, but small reports of Mothman sightings prior to 9/11 as well as Chernobyl. And again, I haven't found huge like police reports about it, people in hysteria about it, like the ones of Point Pleasant, West Virginia. But I do think it's important to let you guys know that I did find those as well. There are some photos out there, particularly there's a photo of the Twin Towers where there's Mothman there. It looks a little photoshopped to me, but I don't know, I'm not a professional. So there are a variety of random claims that I also found that I will try and link editing back. And don't forget some message boards and stuff down below that I found where people are just talking about what they think they saw was Mothman, but no tragedy happened immediately after. So I do find those interesting as well, where it was just a sighting as opposed to the omen of this bad event that's about to happen. So what does the Mothman actually look like? So like I mentioned in the first story, there are reports say that he's about 7 feet tall, man-like bipedal, with large wings on its back. Now that is something that's really interesting, as opposed to the arms being wings. People claim that there are arms plus wings on the back. So think of that as an angel, how they have wings plus arms like a normal human would, just throw some wings back there. But the wings have about a 10 to 15 foot wingspan, and they're like bat wings as opposed to feathers or anything like that. They do have that skin that goes on them. So they're like bat wings. And then the head is kind of a normal biggish head, but it has two big red eyes on either side, which gives it the kind of look of a moth. It's kind of hard to describe this thing. There wasn't much about the mouth area. I couldn't, some photo or some drawings make it look like it has a beak. Others just give it a human mouth. Others give it this creepy, teethy grin. But there wasn't really much on the sightings about what the mouth looked like. I also didn't find anything about antennas, like you would hear about in moth creatures. And also the skin is said to be like a grayish brownish color. So it's not like human skin, like it has an actual color to it, as opposed to it being white or black or brown. It's just a grayish brown. So nothing that would be anything that we would see on the human race. And it is also said to be able to fly, like it will shoot straight up in the air and can fly up to 100 miles per hour, and also it can stop kind of like helicopter-like and hover in one spot. So it has great agility, can move incredibly fast. So that kind of brings me to the question as to why the people it was chasing never got caught or never got hurt from it. They were just completely traumatized. And also, might I add, when I say completely traumatized, these people, especially the first one, there's reports that the girl who was driving had to go to therapy because she was so messed up from the sighting. Like that was awful. She had no way to comprehend what she had seen. The other people were also incredibly messed up, and people report intense fear when they see it. But to me, that's not a big surprise. That doesn't seem like something that is that surprising. If you saw this thing, wouldn't you freak out too? So we're gonna get into the theories, and this is where things go every which direction. So one of the smallest theories is that this is just an owl. Owls can be a little bit creepy. They can get very big, but that doesn't explain the aggressive behavior, chasing people away, the 10 to 15 foot wingspan, red eyes. Owls' eyes are reflective, I believe, but they would not be red. I don't think there's any species of animal that has red reflective eyes. I could be wrong. Correct me, or editing Becca, correct me. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. Now the next one is a bit out of this world. So aliens. Some people believe that this is an alien coming to the region and just kind of doing its thing. But they also claim that whenever Mothman is sighted or is around, that it does affect the electrical currencies, which is something that I guess, I don't know much about aliens, that I guess when aliens are around that is affected. And also that animals behave oddly. But while yes, that might be a characteristic of aliens, that is also a characteristic of other animals being around animals. When a mountain lion comes into your area, your dog's in the backyard might act a little weird. That's just normal with animals. But electricity, it's kind of weird. What do you guys think about that one? I do think that's a little bit out there, but who knows? I mean, we don't know anything about this. So the next one I kind of touched on earlier, Thunderbird. Some people claim that this is the Thunderbird in that region, but if you know anything about the Thunderbird legend, it doesn't match up. The anatomy of the Thunderbird that's reported versus the anatomy of Mothman are not the same. Also, I believe, and I could be wrong, I should have done research on this before I filmed it, I believe the Thunderbird is known to be in a completely different region of the the United States, North America, as opposed to where the Mothman is known to be in a separate region. I think they're completely separate, but let me know. So this next one actually kind of seems a little bit realistic to me, but mutant birds. As I mentioned, that the sightings tend to be around the TNT plant, where there actually was a huge disaster where this stuff was left unkept and it leaked into the ponds and into the ground. So animals are drinking this, they're eating the plants that are now absorbing that. So this awful waste that shouldn't be in the ground is now being put into these animals. So maybe a bird turned a little bit mutant. I mean, there's mutant animals coming out of Chernobyl, aren't there? And now it's just a weird bird in the area. But again, very aggressive. I don't think a mutant bird would have a 10 to 15 foot wingspan. I think the biggest bird has like a 5 foot wingspan. I could be wrong. All my times to the zoo could have failed me. But a mutant bird seems, I'd be scared of a mutant bird, but it's also not bipedal. And also, as I mentioned before, when you are scared, your brain tricks you into thinking something might be bigger. It's dark. You might be under the influence of something. You might be under the influence of fear. That changes so much. When you are scared, your brain will play so many tricks on you. Take it from me, it happens. Now, this is, I would say, probably my favorite theory and the most interesting, and I'm not going to go too far into it because that would make this video an hour long, but if you want to have a discussion about it in the comments, I'm all for it. That is the theory that this is an angel or a supernatural higher being that is just hanging out here. It could be coming from another dimension, or it could be coming from wherever higher beings come from. Unknown at this point. This theory comes with a bit of controversy as well, because the Mothman shows up pre times of destruction or tragedy. So that kind of gives us the feeling, an eerie feeling, that this creature is causing us this destruction. But some people have brought up the point that perhaps this is a supernatural higher being that is trying to warn us of destruction and tragedy, and trying to be like, hey, chase these kids away from the TNT plant before they go in somewhere and blow themselves up because of the leftover gunpowder. Or they're trying to scare people off of the bridge before it collapses. So there is that theory, and I do think that one is incredibly interesting. But on the flip side of that theory, we could also be like, angels, I mean, Lucifer was a bad angel. It could be a demon. It could be just a bad supernatural being that is causing these things, that is an omen of doom or a reaper of sorts. So I do think that theory of a supernatural higher being is very, very interesting. Like I said, the reaper theory is really, really cool, or a good or bad omen of death. Is really cool, or the idea of it just trying to get people away from these bad things happening in the area. I'm sorry, my camera died out right at the end here. So I was saying, I don't know how much you caught, but it very well could be just something trying to chase us away from the bad things that are going to be happening in that particular area at that time. Or we could go with the more boring option, is that this entire thing is just a hoax, and that is used to create this tourist trap of Point Pleasant now, and that people were just freaking themselves out in that time period, and it really is just nothing. But I think that's kind of boring. But that is everything that I have for you guys today, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys like this kind of stuff, give it a thumbs up. Let me know down below what you guys think. Like I said, that one theory is my absolute favorite. I think it's really, really cool and a very interesting topic that I discovered. So yeah, I'm just gonna let you guys go now. I hope you guys have a fantastic day, night, whatever it is, wherever you are, and stay spooky.